we had a masculine being, as far as we know, make some comments that were very, what I would call low vibrational, especially in terms of how the genders, the masculine and feminine, interact with one another. And it really sparked, honestly, a trauma response in me initially. And then Scott and I were able to share a bit about it afterwards. And from our sharing sparked the guidance to have this conversation. So what I feel like I'm bringing to this circle is a deep passion for my own healing of my own feminine and masculine energies within myself, and how in turn I get to show up and hold healing space for humanity to balance these energies within each and every one of us, within our collective family. And so we can all really experience what I call that divine marriage of the masculine and feminine within ourselves and within how we share and interact with one another.
That's beautiful. Pam, could you actually go again real quick? I don't think I actually had started the broadcast. I thought I had, and I hadn't. So yours wasn't even in there. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to bring to the table today.
Absolutely, sure. So again, hello everyone, and I'm Pamela Aubrey. What I really just, have kind of had in my thinking the last couple of days since we talked about doing this was just my own experience growing up in, a household that was very traditional, and some of the mindsets that come out of that, and then, coming into really a life that wasn't traditional, and seeing, society evolve in a lot of ways, and then coming to kind of understand some of the energies around that. And so I think it'll be just a lot of fun to have discussion around that, what that really means for us, kind of at this stage of the game as a society, but really, as a whole, as a collective.
I love it. That's beautiful. Prashant, this is your first Facebook Live StreamYard, and I'm learning technology too. So what are you going to bring to the table today? Who are you? Who is this guy in the bottom left-hand corner?
I think where I look at it from is, what does it take for us to not be in the toxic space, right? Is it just all of masculinity that people look at as toxic, or all of femininity? Or is it, what does it actually be toxic, and where does that come from in the conversation that we're creating here?
Very cool. Well, you just brought up the term toxic masculinity. So why don't we kickstart that with you? Because I can tell you right now, a lot of people get very offended by that word. And a lot of people feel that that's a word of empowerment for certain groups as well. I'll just share 2 seconds of growing up in the north of Boston in a blue collar town, Peabody, Massachusetts. Many, if not most of my friends, including myself, were brought up that everything was a conquest. Who could be the best athlete? Who could get the most women? Who was the toughest? Who could drink the most beer? It was all about, this masculinity defined as just winning and conquest. So with that in mind, and in some of the path of where I've come from since then, tell us about what you think of toxic masculinity, and what is that to you? Because a lot of people have a very different idea what that means.
So I would say toxic masculinity is where it starts hurting, both men and women, right? So a lot of people think toxic masculinity is about women. It's really not so. It's just about behaviors that society has created as an expectation of men, that, or of women, because, women have masculine side too, where it can, where it starts either hurting them or others. And there's almost an expectation to deliver to that standard. And in that standard, the hurt that is caused, or the harm that is caused in the process, is what I would say is the toxicity of the masculinity. And it usually comes either from an expected pressure or an unexpected pressure that people are forced to adhere to. And the force, is internalized, right? Because everybody has the choice to say no, but where do you learn to say no or not say no? And that of the conversation, I think, starts creating the toxicity within people. And that actually spans across both sides, masculinity and femininity. Because the moment the expectation that you have is going to be about causing harm, that's where the toxicity comes into the behavior.
That's beautiful. What do you think, Heather or Pam?
Well,
I say Heather.
my journey and my own awakening process, what's come to be a truth for me is that the toxic masculinity stems from the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of conditioning of that to be a man, like you're saying, the conquest, successful, productive man, you have to shut off your feminine nature. And so there creates a real imbalance. And it really is, it transcends beyond someone being embodied as male or female, like Prashant said. Like women can display toxic masculinity as well if you're embodied as a woman and identify as a woman. But just in general, it's that imbalance in that sense that it's less than if you express your feelings, if you create time to connect with your intuition and your creativity, if you lean into compassion and connectivity and cooperation, this win or lose mentality that we've been conditioned to think is the right way, like all of that, I feel like, and it's so deep, it's so old, that's all created this cultural way of being that is very toxic. And fortunately, we have reached a place within our consciousness, I feel like, where we're aware of it, we're becoming aware of it. And so many of us are willing to do the healing and the unpacking of all of it. So that's something to be celebrated. The fact we're having this conversation right now and we're live on social media, and who knows how many beautiful souls are going to connect in with this. Like, that's really amazing. When I was a kid, I know Scott and I are the same generation, the Gen Xers. Like, this was not a conversation at all. At all. Like,
I would have gotten beat up.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So a lot of hope here.
So Pam, here's a question for you. You haven't said anything yet. So here's something. A lot of people think that concept of toxic masculinity, when they say that word, that it's men bashing. Mm-hmm. So for the men out there who are thinking, oh, here we go again, a bunch of women and a couple sympathizers out there, they're out there just to crush us, and that guy's not a real man. What do you have to say to those men and help them better identify or understand what the word toxic masculinity means?
I actually really love that because, I kind of look at it. I mean, I have a son who's 20 now, and I see the way that a lot of these ideas affect men, especially young men, boys and young men, as they're growing up and they're trying to come into their identity. And there's so many mixed messages. And, and he happens to be, a man that's very intuitive. And I love that about him because this great wisdom comes out of this young 20-year-old boy, man. And, it's like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? Well, it came from his intuition because he's listening, he's paying attention. And I think that, what has the mistake that's been made is that we've somehow equated power with this masculine, energy of sort of conquering things like we're talking about. And so instead of realizing that men can also gain power through intuition, we have this notion, and going back to what Heather was saying, this is kind of historically what we have believed because, we're coming from being, cavemen or whatever. I mean, where men had to hunt and all these sorts of things to survive, and trying to evolve into, where we are in modern society now, where you don't have to go out and kill something to eat that day, right? And so to help young men, boys, to be able to come up in a society that understands, guess what? We've evolved beyond that point. It's okay if we evolve as a species too. And if you can actually learn some of these things, it will actually empower you.
So I actually have quite a few friends I've grown up with, and their mindsets haven't shifted a lot by no fault of anybody. Society and the environment and growth is something that occurs at different paces for all of us. One of the things that I've noticed is a lot of these men have attached to a woman and they've partnered with the same mindset, and say they both look at toxic. If I'll see them on a post and it'll say something like this, I'll say, here goes more toxic masculinity. And they'll say, here comes the wussification of America. Mm-hmm. And I think we really need to talk through this, because we've got a lot of people that seem to think a man can no longer be strong. A man can no longer fight physically or in other ways to defend a woman or defend somebody who's not as strong as he is. And I just don't see that. I think it's just a misidentification of the word. And I think that we're misunderstanding what's being said. So do you guys have anything to add to that, to those people who are literally trying to go into their own echo chamber, whether male or female, and they see toxic masculinity as something that is going to get rid of men, like destroy men? What do we need to say to them right now? Because I think what's happened to me personally is all the traditional man qualities have now just been beautifully balanced with a better understanding of the feminine side and better understanding of others. And to echo what Pam said, going much deeper inside into my intuitive self and saying, there's part of me that was hurt that I could never show because I always had to be tough. So what do we tell those people? Because they're out there and there's a lot of them and they're hurting inside too. How do we help them take that first step to realize no one wants to wussify America? We want to make America into a much more beautiful place. I didn't want to say make America great again, because I will not say that. What do you guys think?
Well, I always, this, Scott, I always like to bring it back to my own personal experience, because that's what I'm the expert on.
Sure.
And in the knowing that I am a mirror for others, as others are a mirror for me. So you can receive this reflection if it resonates. But throughout my journey, as I have not only reclaimed the power of what I call my divine feminine nature, I've also been reclaiming the power of my divine masculine nature that was very out of balance in me because of the experiences that I've had historically with the masculine that have been traumatic for me. I really shut that part of myself off. And as a result of that, I had poor boundaries. I was not able to provide for myself as well as I could have. I wasn't able to advocate for myself as well as I could have. So that's been a big part of my healing process. And I'm grateful to say, I feel like I am in a place now that I embrace my masculine, and I'm my masculine protector, provider, advocate is really awesome and fierce in the best kind of way. So, and I love what Pamela shared about what she's witnessing in her son. And I see this in the younger generations as well.
Oh yeah.
Is they are so in balance, in that these younger men who identify as a man, they are open to their intuition, and they are open to channeling their creativity, and that it feels safe for them to express their feelings and rest in their heart. And that only is strengthening those masculine qualities I was just talking about. So it's like powerhouse energy. Plus, you're less likely to get yourself into trouble.
Sure.
Which historically, a lot of my friends who are men around my age have done, because they were out of balance with that feminine. So it's like the best of both worlds. So it's not what'd you say, wussifying?
Wussification. That's what I was told.
No, it's like strengthening that masculine. That it's like this amazing force of nature, because it has that loving, compassionate, intuitive, creative, feminine nature holding the space for the masculine to come through.
So I'll speak real quick. I'll speak real quick to my friends, and I'll pass it off to you, Prashant. I'm going to do it a sports analogy so that we can all get it. So just imagine this: if masculinity allows you to be a great basketball player, and you can shoot, you can dribble, you can jump, and all those things come from the masculine side, the basketball IQ comes from the feminine side. And I'm not saying women are smart. I'm just giving you an example. So everything that you've got physically and your ability to play that game, we're never going to take that away. So all the strength and the physical qualities and the things that we've been told are defining for our masculinity, all embracing the feminine does is it adds to you. So if you feel half full all the time and you feel like there's something that's not complete, and that makes you want to just pound down more on the masculine to say, I'm tough, no one can stop me, but you're hurting inside and you're going to explode, all you need to do is fill up a little of your being with feminine. And feminine has been so ill-defined to men, and masculine has been so ill-defined to female, and we're going to start to bring that back together. Prashant, what do you got to add to that? Or Pam?
Yeah, I think so. One of the ways I would look at it is, the whole construct, although we're starting to create the masculine, feminine more so, just going back to a pivot, right? Saying just, what about the humanity of it, right? The very notion that we're starting to talk about masculinity and femininity as separate aspects, and it gets interpreted as male and female, starts causing expectations at the end of the day, saying this is a masculine behavior, this is a feminine behavior. And so when we start talking about masculine and feminine, it's like strength becomes masculine, creative becomes feminine. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way, right? So if we just take away that and just talk about humanity underneath all of it doesn't necessarily need to go into one or the other. Then it automatically starts integrating behaviors, and it becomes about desire, right? What's desired versus what's undesirable. And it may show up one way for you, it might show up a different way for another person, and allows people to be responsible for them where they are, versus responsibility from expectations, how people are trying to cater to the societal conversation. What I loved about what you guys said is you all are both from the same generation X, you say. And in the generation, expectations are different. My generation has a different expectation. Pam's generation has a different expectation. But if you just take away all of that and just say, hey, what's human expectation of you, right? As a human being, what's going to serve you and what's going to serve everybody? If you come from that, I think a lot of this starts getting dissipated immediately, and then it gives people space to be however they are, right? For example, you look at gender roles and then cultural roles that come into play. So you see certain behaviors more in certain cultures. One of my friends talks about the rape cultures right now, which are starting to get very violent, and again, masculine toxicity, and what does that look like in those cultures? And then you have the passive aggressive cultures, and what are the behaviors that stem out of that? And you also have a transitioning world called, right, materialism and divinity. Both of them are being interpreted differently. So there's a transitional conversation, and that there's a lot of chaos about what becomes personified as masculine or feminine, right? And what you talked about, needing to be the strong athlete jock or the beautiful soft female, all of those roles that start coming into place, then people need to start catering to that. And that becomes a big source of toxicity, because what I don't want to comply with that. And there's no room in there to be different, to be unique. And then there's this whole conversation of uniqueness. And a lot of unique expression becomes something that goes against expectation, just as a way to rebel, or just as a way to act out, or just as a way to express yourself. And that's sort of, I would say, is the source of toxicity in the cultural conversation that we have.
I think that's beautiful because,
What do you think, Pam?
That's what I was going to do. I was going to hand it off to her too. What do you got?
Oh, well, I actually really appreciate there were a lot of things that I was thinking while he was talking that just kept coming to me, but I appreciate, the idea that really it is, these are energies that we all share. So going back to, being intuitive and being empowered by that, I think that historically, women having power has been a threatening thing. And so that's where that toxicity can come in. But, realistically, yes. I mean, there are plenty of men out there who have very feminine qualities, and then they feel threatened, likewise, because they don't fit into this particular male masculine mold that has sort of been created by our society. And so I think it is interesting to look at it, from kind of the historical perspective, but also, now that we are seeing kids come up in this generation that seem to have an understanding that, yes, you can embody all these different energies, whether you're male or female. And it really doesn't have to be a competition, that we can actually work together. And when we do that, we all get a lot more of what we want. And I think ultimately, that's what lies at the heart of it, is the fear that somehow if we give something up, that we're going to lose something, control, or something that we, think that we have, if we control things with force. And so it's kind of making that shift and understanding that that's just not really the case.
What do you think, Heather?
Well, I feel that this would be a whole nother conversation, so I'm going to be mindful of how I word it, that when we are willing to evolve, which that is my sense, so much of what's happening right now, like this whole experience we're all sharing on this beautiful planet is about evolving in ways that we never have before. So that process of evolution involves releasing things that don't fit anymore. And when we're able to do that, then something new that is more resonant and life-giving and affirming comes in. And I think that's across the board with so much of the constructs that have been present in our reality. That's what's happening right now, including gender norms, how we define ourselves in that construct. And it's a natural, organic part of evolution. Everything else in nature does it very seamlessly. And so we can as well. So I have so much compassion for everyone who is feeling fear about the letting go and the changes, because I know I have felt that and do feel that at times in my life with big changes. So it's a universal experience, and we are so capable of moving through the changes, and together. It's going to create much more ease as we do it together. So that's what is coming to heart for me.
I love it.
At the moment.
There's one thing just to add, and I think it's always important at spaces like this. So if you're somebody who's listening right now and you're experiencing a loss of a job, a loss of a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, and it's because you're sitting in a space where all this transition is happening, you have two choices once you have that loss. You've got a full cup. Part of that cup is empty now. You can try to go chase exactly what you just had and refill it the same way and return to your status quo, your normal. But here's an opportunity, and think of why the universe has done this. I always have students who ask me questions and they say, I want to become a millionaire, or I want to become famous, or I want to become a business owner. And then 2 days later, they'll come to me and say, oh my God, I just lost my job at Subway. I got to go get another job at Thundercloud or another sub shop. And I ask them, I say, hold on a second. Didn't you want to become a millionaire? Do you think that the universe was freeing up time for you to go chase that dream? So this is the same thing. Is there going to be a level of discomfort in that transition when we add more to ourselves? And the answer is yes. Is this road going to be easy? And the answer is no. Is the road and the journey going to be beautiful and bumpy? Welcome to life. And so here's what I would suggest to all of you. Look deep inside. You are your own guru. All your answers are lying within. You will find what you're supposed to fill yourself up with if you're honest with yourself. So you could be sitting here saying, I just want to go eat brownies. I just want to go drink. I just want to go meet another guy or another girl to fill that void. But you know darn well that's not the solution. So I would challenge you for the first time in your life, if it is the first time in your life, to realize that you are being shaken by the universe right now. and you've got a beautiful opportunity to embrace whether it's the masculine and the feminine that you're lacking. Anybody get anything else to add? I want to make sure people get walkaways that they can take and use right now.
I really love that. I really feel like, when people allow themselves to just give themselves that grace, allow themselves to be where they are, to experience what they are, if it's a feeling of loss, to just sit with it for a little while and just be in it and not have to judge yourself or judge the circumstance and really just allow it, then these shifts will just start to take place.
Trust in the universe, trust in God, trust in creator, whatever you call it. We hear it time and time again, but do we really do it? Right? What do you think of that, Prashant?
And trust in yourself, right? Ultimately, that you actually do know what it is that you want to express for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people may have whatever relationship they have with the creator, but you also have a relationship with yourself that you can choose to honor. And when you can work from there, and nothing else, right? It's not the judgments, not the assessments, not the opinions, but just truly in a way that honors you for who you are. I think that alone would give people space to move away from whatever it is that the movement needs to be.
I love it. Heather, I know you have something brilliant to add. I can feel it.
Well, there is an abundance of brilliance and wisdom present here already with what everyone's sharing. I'm wholeheartedly receiving it. I just get to reflect that if you are connecting with this whenever you are, that it's meant to be, that there's a specific reason that you're receiving this at this moment, this divine time in your journey. And it's a way that the universe is reflecting to you your magnificence and your capacity to evolve, and just know how loved you are and that you're here for a reason, and you have something very, very special to share with the world that only you can share. And we're so grateful that you're here.
That's so perfect. I've got an idea. Why don't we actually back up a tiny bit? Why don't we tell, I'll briefly explain the reason that this show came to be. You started to explain it. So Heather and I were doing a live the other day, and we were talking about taking fear and turning that fear into curiosity and going back to a childlike state. And that time where you celebrated life, where everything was new and there was just joy in everything before we took emotional attachments and connected them to every single thing. So we're constantly fighting emotions. Well, right in the space where we started to talk more clearly about how would we step back into that childlike component of ourselves, somebody started coming in who had, liked one of Heather's pages and was writing extremely ridiculously lewd, crazy stuff, very sexual stuff. So for Heather, that's creating a trauma response, because in the feminine and being a female, you've received that. First of all, I didn't see it. I couldn't see it from where I was. So I was just continuing talking, and she told me about it afterwards. But let's talk about, first of all, the fact that men, women, anybody feels comfortable enough to just start speaking extremely derogatorily about people and saying things that are so lewd, whether it's in person, hiding behind a screen of the internet, but just expecting a response. I believe that when people start to do that so brazenly, that we're at a point where the conversation's happening. So let's talk about some ways that we as bystanders can intercept those things and help change that. Because you asked me, what can we do? Should we respond? Should we ignore it? Should we delete it? Let's think about what people can do in that situation, because we've all seen it. There's a friend who makes a comment. We have a president right now who's in office, and we just called it locker room talk. That's absolutely insane to me that we can fully justify that. And then we totally just denounce everything that the accuser of Kavanaugh said. And now the same thing with Biden, the same thing with, it just goes on and on. It's just part of doing business. What can we do right this second to change the mindset and be accountable for ourselves and others? What actions can we take to avoid these things or manage them?
I think that's a great question. and I think Heather can obviously relate to this. I think as a woman, most women, I really don't know very many women that this isn't the case for. You experience these sorts of things all throughout your life. And I can remember, things like this happening as young as the age of 7. And so I think that there needs to definitely be a lot of conversation around what happens, when these things do occur, so that we all can sort of come to this place where there isn't the shame that there has been in the past around talking about these sorts of things, and giving girls the opportunity to come forth, and really voice what they need in all of this. I mean, you saw the Me Too movement. It was massive. Well, of course it was, because we've all been there. Frankly, I don't think I know a woman that wouldn't say Me Too, right? And so the reality is that this is going to be pretty much every girl's experience. And why haven't we been talking about it already? There needs to be so much more conversation and education around it.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful, Pamela. That is so true. And for my process has been since that happened, because honestly, I had not experienced that directly in quite a long time. I experienced it too very early on in my life, into maidenhood and, my 20s. And then it started to taper off for whatever reasons it did. And so it really caught me off guard. And like Scott reflected, I felt the trauma in my body from those past experiences. And again, intergenerational. I mean, I remember hearing stories my grandmother would tell about how she was sexually harassed, and my great grandmother. And, it's part of our reality. And once again, like, how beautiful that we're holding this space to have an open dialogue about it. That in itself is reflecting that something's shifting. So for me, I'm regrouping and tapping into the next healing that I get to offer myself around that personally. And it's very energetic as well. It's not up in my head thinking a whole lot about it. It's moving the energy, the trauma energy out of my body, the next layers of it. And also, I am so open and thrilled to continue to have these conversations. I wasn't able to advocate for myself as a young girl because it was normal. There was nothing wrong with it.
Right.
We thought, this is just normal. You just deal with it. You just deal with it. And now we know better. So advocating for myself, advocating for women and men, and as Prashant said, advocating for humanity. Like, this is not okay. Like, this is traumatic. It causes damage to everybody. So let's all come together to heal and transform this. And we really can now. I want to plant a seed, as you were sharing, Pam. I know there are several organizations out there addressing this. One in particular I know of is called Gender Reconciliation. And they have a whole process of circles and gatherings to do this healing work. So if anybody's feeling called, that's something you could look into, is Gender Reconciliation.
Very cool. Yeah. What do you have to add, Prashant?
Well, I love what you both already said. I think one of the key things to look at is, instead of looking at the generational conversations that you're bringing into you that continues to perpetuate the fear that's been sort of bred into us, right? What about looking at the future that you want to live into, right? If the future you want to live into is free and happy, and you choose that versus the generational conversations, you can actually transform that in the moment. And then just keep staying there, because you're going to stay in either. You can either live in the conversation of the generational fears, or you can live in the conversation of future happiness. And you can choose that every moment, which is where the choice is, right? So instead of, again, the whole conversation of reaction, right? Who we are is a constant reaction to our environment, or to what's been presented to us, or to what's been expected for us, or from us rather, to actually just look at, like, what is it that I want, right? To come from that space of choice, and to step into that choice powerfully, so that the circumstances may be what they may be, and you still get to choose yourself as you are in every moment, and then creating from there, so that you actually get to create something new, and create something newly each time. And it may feel like a lot of work, right? Each time, like, oh, there's a fear again, and we have to transform again. Yeah, it may be that, or you may just notice, like, oh yeah, that's not who I am. That's that old stuff that came up again. But really, what I want to be is this new space, and just step into that new space each time.
Beautifully said, Rashant.
Because then you start actually from all of that. Yeah.
I've got a question that somebody has that I would like to answer as a group, because I think it's very pertinent right now, because I want to just preface it by saying this. If we're coming from the space of trauma in the feminine or in the masculine, and when I say that, let's just go to traditional gender roles. Just say, both Pam and Heather, as a female, you've experienced things I'd ever had to deal with. And then everything I did, it was always wrong, because we were told to be strong and told to be tough and do this, but then we're not supposed to do it this way or that way, or what the hell do you want from me? And we're all like, we're hurting. So we end up with this polarization where the minute we hear something, we know who was right or wrong, correct? We know that the accuser clearly is correct. And we know that the accused is a bad person, depending on our perspective. So let's take a look at this question by Aaron Keith. How do we balance between having compassion and making space to hear out the accuser in these situations, while also not passing judgment on the accused until proven guilty? This seems to be a big challenge and touchy topic, but we got to ask the hard questions, and I appreciate that. So let's really think about that. Take a look at that for a second before I take it down, because now we can't see Heather and Prashant, but let's think about that. So we're in a world right now where one group hears that think of these football players. All right, so there's a football player at like Florida State or UT or Baylor. They do something, half of the town, because they love football, and then there's patriarchal mentality says that woman's just trying to become famous. Instant. Then we look from the other side of that. What about if it was a black man in Westlake, the rich part of Austin? Let's just cut the bull crap right now. If that black man did something in Westlake, who's guilty there? That's definitely, I can guarantee you that white woman was telling the truth. So here's where we start this conversation right now. First and foremost, we all got to step deep inside of ourselves and just want to live with integrity. I'm just going to give a 2-second overview of how we think we can start to heal this. And we say this all the time in Go Love Now. One of the first things that we can do to heal ourselves is extend self. And I say this all the time. So my definition of self as a child was I was a strong male athlete, and it was all about conquest. And it was me, 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 me. As I evolved and I started to look more at family, my tribe, then all men, and then men and some females, and then everybody. And now I truly see the world and self as all of existence. So for me, I have to look at both of those parties and say, what really happened here? Because I can't even imagine either of them being in it. And so I've had conversations about Kobe Bryant. I've had conversations where people are going, but she was accused. He was accused. So the stats that I've heard, 20% of all accusations end up being false. 80% end up being true. That's the stat I've got out there. Okay. So 1 in 5 chance that Kobe was not guilty. Okay. According to statistics, we want to play that game. But then you have people saying there's no way that girl was trying to get famous. And then people were saying he's a rapist. We weren't there. What do we do starting right now in the present to make sure these things don't continue to happen? And what do we do to extend self so that we're not passing judgment instantaneously? That's what I want to ask you guys. And that's a fantastic question, Aaron. Thank you for bringing that to us.
That is a huge question, right? And I think one of the best ways to look at it is being transparent. The more transparency you can create with the people around you, the more where they know who you are and where you are, the less the accusations and the expectations have power over you. Because it's another accusation, right? When it sticks, is when people around you actually know something about your experience in a way that relates to more to their story than your story. Right? So the greater transparency you're able to bring to who you are and what you're creating and what you're up to with others, or not creating, or you might be stuck and just being like, I'm stuck. Like this is sucks. And being able to be that transparent with the people around you. Not, you don't have to be on Facebook and holler about that to everybody. But in your close circles or closer circles or large circles, if you're a public figure, people actually get to know you for who you are. And from there, that could actually diminish the power of those accusations. And that works for the better or the worse, right? I mean, there are a lot of public figures that have been torn down, a lot of public figures that have risen despite those allegations. So there's a big aspect to that, and then to actually just trust yourself again, right? If you trust yourself, then you'll stay committed to your course, regardless of who or what's trying to tear you down, and then you build that trust around you because that is. So that's one way I would look at it, as possibly just owning your power, and power, not force, right? Not shutting them up, not swatting them, not none of that really works. So just owning your power, saying this is who I am. Now go do what.
Seems like we're losing Prashant. So I'll add something to that. I really love what he talked about he went to the micro instead of the macro and went to personal accountability. And at the end of the day, all of this starts in yourself. So to answer, Aaron's question, I think the most beautiful answer that we could have started with is one of what can I do, and not what can I do to get other people to do something. Because if we take the step, and that transparency is such a beautiful thing, because one of the things that we do is we wear masks, and we wear masks in life so that we don't have to experience emotion and pain, whether it's sadness or anger or fear. So we pretend we're somebody in every group. Now, I don't know how this came to be for me, but I'm just who I am. And you guys might laugh or whatever, because you're like, it's pretty true. You're going to say what you think when you think it, and that's just it. And so I would really challenge people to focus on that full transparency, because at some point in existence, something is going to pop up that people are going to find out something about you that just doesn't feel good. And you're really afraid of that now. And so most of us are sitting in a space where, well, I don't want Scott to know that about me. I don't want Heather to know that about me. Here's the deal. Dump it out there. Just be honest. And this is going to take time, because we've put on so many masks and so many suits, and there's so many lies. And so as I'm saying this, people are probably listening saying, you do that. I can't do that. Like if my husband knew, or if my daughter knew, or if, here's the deal, start making decisions based on, do you want to be transparent with it? Because at the end of the day, when you're sitting on your deathbed and looking back, if you were transparent and you had that vulnerability, your existence is going to be so much more fulfilling. I can promise you that. I haven't died yet, so I can't fully promise. I'm just going on what hospice nurses have said, that the number one regret of all people right before passing is always, I wish I did more to live for myself and to become the full self that I could be. Prashant popped off, and we're getting him right back in here. He's back. There he is. So what do you guys think about that? Let's add to that. So we've got the idea of bringing transparency, removing the masks, personal accountability. What else can we add to give to our listeners?
Well, I love that. I mean, to me, it brings up the point of, what do we really want? I mean, if we really take an honest look at ourselves, at our lives, at our society, at our world, what do we really want? And then we start to evaluate that on a personal level and determine if the things we're doing line up with what we say we want. And, if we're if we're buying into ideas that are toxic, ultimately, is that really what we want? And if not, then what do we want?
Very good points. What do you think, Heather?
Yeah, there's always freedom to change, right? Like if you found like, oh, this is what I wanted, but then I didn't want that. Just by being transparent, saying, oh, I got what I wanted, I didn't want that, now I want something else. It allows you to just declare that and keep moving. And again, the trust and the transparency would allow you like, oh, I got this, now if I change it, what will happen? Versus if you're living transparently, that again, that fear loses its power over you, right? In that moment, you don't have to be worried about, oh, what will people say if they see me changing? It's like, oh, I got this and I didn't want it, now I want that instead. And then that way you can responsibly be again known in your group. So again, those allegations and those things that people can use you down don't hold power.
Yeah. So I love that, but how do we get? So I'm listening to you as a third party right now, hearing this. A lot of times you hear these beautiful tidbits of wisdom, but how do I take the accountability, or how do I even start, or how do I even know what I want? Because I know that I was supposed to go to college. I know I was supposed to marry a pretty girl. I know I was supposed to have a nice car. What do you want from me, Prashant? Like, how do I figure that out? Because there's people right now struggling to figure out what they want. So who am I supposed to be? Because it's really, really confusing. And I want to know, for those people who are listening, who are going, this is one more thing I'm not doing right. One more thing I've got to figure out. So there's more stuff wrong with me. Let's give them a simple takeaway right now, whatever we've got, that they can start the process of figuring out what you really want, because it's a scary process.
Can I share something, Scott?
That figuring.
And it's not a right or wrong. First of all, like, just take that off the table. That's the old paradigm. And honestly, the accuser and the accused is too. Like, let's go much deeper than that. That's old paradigm. You're right. I'm wrong. You did this to me. Victim, perpetrator, like all that kind of stuff. Like, an underlying thing is we're human and we're all hurting. That's part of the human condition. And it's like, you can't ignore it anymore. We cannot ignore the hurt anymore. And I respect and I love Prashant, period. And I love what he's saying about what are you choosing to create in your life in this now moment? Like, what do you want to dream now for this new reality? And that's so key. And in order for us to do that, we can't spiritual bypass what's been blocking us.
Tell them what you
are aligning with that.
Do me a favor real quick, because that's a term that comes up a lot, and I want to make sure people understand it. What do you mean by spiritual bypass? So
we can't ignore and like be all love and light and, just think positively. We get to address and honor our human experience, like everything that's brought us to this point and what is causing us to feel disconnected from our true self and from one another. And that disconnect is what, causes us to act out. Right? So we've got to address that. And there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just a willingness to do it. And your head isn't going to tell you how. It's like, and this is back to that preciousness of honoring all aspects of who we are. Call it masculine, feminine, feeling, whatever you want to call it. Like, we need to be able to get back to that place of listening to ourselves and listening to the heart. And the heart's going to tell you what feels resonant and what doesn't. And that's a place to begin. Yes. Begin, middle, and end. So that's what I would share with our dear brothers and sisters who are connecting in with this. And fortunately, there's so much support out there. There's more support out there than ever before to be walking this journey. So I know everyone on this live stream right now are guides and supports, and there's so many resources out there. So we're not meant to do this on our own. Mm-hmm. We're meant to be supported and held, as we move through this journey.
And that can be confusing too, because we're constantly saying, you're your own guru. The answers lie within. You don't need anybody else. I want that fine line to be understood too, because here's the thing. We were put in this existence to experience a unique perspective of universe. So we all have a unique perspective based on our soul, our experience, our DNA, how we see the world. And we do that to create contrast and understanding and create life. So from that perspective, all the answers lie within. But remember this, everybody else has a unique perspective. So for example, Tiger Woods has a coach. Why? He's the best golfer on the face of the earth, because that coach can see something he's not doing. And so this doesn't mean listen to everything everybody else is telling you, but you'll know if you're trusting in yourself and somebody shows up like Prashant or like Heather or Pam at a time when I'm struggling, they said, hey, Scott, have you thought of blank? And all of a sudden I'm like, the angels have spoken. And we have those moments. We've just got to clear out the noise and the distortion, because the angels are all around you and they are you. They're your friends. They're your family. And so be careful you want to get support and you want connection, but go deep first. And you've got to take that journey. And however you start, that is up to you. But there is no spiritual bypass. People want to do that. People want to run by and not experience and process emotion. I don't believe there's any way to get there if you're going to do that. You have to go through everything you've compartmentalized, all the pain, the suffering, the emotion. And again, is it going to be pretty? Can you do one bite at a time? Yes and yes. Yes and no. It's not going to be pretty. You can do one bite at a time. Mm-hmm. So what else do you guys have? I'd love to get one last takeaway, one beautiful piece of advice in 60 seconds, something that everyone can hear and say, that just changed my life. Who wants to start? Putting a lot of pressure. Change some lives here.
Well, I don't know if this is that piece, but I will throw this out there. I do think that one of the things that we can do that's very simple, and really it doesn't have to be a big deal. It literally is just looking at something that we think we want. Let's use an example that you used earlier. You want the beautiful wife. Okay, why is it so important to me? What does that really mean to me to have a beautiful wife? What is the meaning of that? What is it? What is the significance? Does it mean that I've arrived, I'm successful? What is the meaning behind whatever it is you think you want? And then you can kind of sit with that and just start to understand it. And all of a sudden it's like you see yourself in a different way. You have a different understanding of yourself. And just that one little thing is a very big step forward.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And but the simple is the best one. Simple's great.
And that's curiosity, being curious.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Love that. Love it. Yeah.
Heather, you want to go?
Sure. So one of my very favorite practices is to place a hand over the heart. So I just invite us to place a hand over their heart, because what I'm about to reflect, your head may disagree with. So this is an immediate heart coherence that you're letting your being know that you're listening to your heart, and know that you are inherently worthy of unconditional love and acceptance, compassion and grace. You are inherently worthy of that. You don't have to do anything or be anything but who you are. So that is my offering from my heart to yours, in deep gratitude for being a member of this human family.
It's beautiful. Are you able to read what Ileana wrote to you?
Yes. If I hear Heather, acceptance and forgiving self first, find our inner love, be truthful. Aho.
Aho.
Beautiful.
What do you got, beautiful,
I think
Prashant?
She captured you.
What, Prashant?
I think she captured you perfectly.
Oh.
Yes.
Prashant, I need some beautiful wisdom from this beautiful man. What do you got?
I just say, go for it, right? I mean, if you're miserable, if something's holding you back, if there's toxicity in your life, if there's toxicity in you, the power is only with you, right? You don't need criticism, you don't need praise. Just go with what it is that you want, and you'll discover, you might make a few mistakes along the way. Mm-hmm. And just be with your community, right? Be with the people that you love, that care for you, that you care for, and share what's going on. They'll show up. And you'll show up in that.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And just to finish up, I'll add a quick thought, and it echoes what you were saying, Heather. We've all said it in some capacity, but no, nothing's wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with you at all. I mean, it's very simple. We have a fluid existence. So wherever we are between darkness and light, wherever we are on this path, some things are going right and some things aren't going as right as you'd want them. And we're just moving along. So everything's a learning opportunity. Those things that keep popping up again and again and again, those are lessons that we haven't learned. They're just opportunities. And so we can find so much joy in everything once we realize that this world is made to be a world of challenge and learning. And so I would suggest that if the words "me too" trigger you, don't get upset with those words, or get upset, feel it, process it, but don't own that every time you hear "me too," bad, bad, bad. Ask yourself why, work through it, feel those emotions. If toxic masculinity upsets you, stop sending out memes saying wussification of America or whatever. Ask yourself, why do I feel that way? Is there something in my identity that aligns to that and I take that personally? Is there something I could shift to add to myself, not take away, but add to myself? And that's what I would leave you all with. And I would love to thank these three amazing people, and I'm sure we'll have them back because they are part of the Go Love Now team. We're going to be doing some amazing stuff. If you guys are looking for any kinds of coaching or anything, everybody here is a coach in their own capacity, and I'd be glad to share information about them if you've taken a liking to one of them. And again, we'll be back for more. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Pamela. And thank you, Heather. I love you guys, and I love our audience.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you, Scott.
Good night to
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Go Love Now, right there. Okay, so